back. Well, not a great day for the bulls in the stock markets, but at the moment the market appears to be finding its feet around that 9170 mark for the Nifty. So let's concentrate on larger issues. We are being joined by Jairam Sridharan, the CFO of Axis Bank, and we have been chatting with our guest editor, Adrian Moat, Managing Director and Chief Agent and Emerging Market Equity Strategist at JP Morgan. Jairam, thank you very much for joining us. Well, you know, we've been getting this news from the government that there is going to be some kind of fresh rules or committees to help the resolution of stressed assets. But first, what's your sense? Is stress declining at all with, you know, steel prices rising and Uday scheme taking away some loans? Is stress generally declining?
Yes. I do think that stress is declining in the system overall. Lata, you got to look at this from sort of three aspects. One is the stock of problems, stress problems that that the industry has had, and while the stock is reducing, and as more and more recognition of stress is happening across the banking system, but the stock is still there and it's still sort of meaningful. So from a stock perspective, it has come down, but you're likely going to see continuing impacts of that into the next year. Then there is a flow question, like incremental flow of new stress, right? New sectors that are getting stressed, or new companies within the stress sectors that are getting problematic, etc. That there are very clear indications that that is not happening, that you're actually not seeing new sources of stress formation, right? Then there is a third aspect of recognized stress, which has already been recognized by the system already, but where provisioning is not yet fully completed in the banking system. And there you are going to continue to see, for already recognized accounts, you're going to see continued push towards provisioning and provisioning coverage. So those are the three ways I'd put it. I think new flow certainly gotten better. Old stock of problems still persists. The stock hasn't come down, you know, apart from the recognition, and provisioning, still there is some room to go.
Jairam, thank you very much for being on the show. Can I ask you a bit about net interest margins post demonetization? I think the clients I speak to are very interested to see whether there is going to be a structural change here.
Yeah, I don't know necessarily about structural, but it is true that in the short to medium term, the net interest margin trends are likely to be south. You know, structurally, if you just look at the system today, there is a load of liquidity, right? The system is flush with liquidity, but deployment opportunities are very limited. So if you just put those two things together, there's a lot of money, not many places to deploy it. The natural corollary or the natural outcome that's going to happen when both these conditions persist is that you're going to see net interest margins compress. Now, the mechanics of how that translates, whether it translates in the form of steep cuts in MCLR, whether it translates in the form of customers shifting from base rate to MCLR, or many other such mechanics, the pathway could be many. And each individual bank in the sector is going to have their own starting position, because of which the steepness of the impact is going to be different. But the fact that net interest margins are on a declining kind of trend, at least in the short to medium term, it looks pretty straightforward that that is going to happen. Now, there is the other aspect of what you asked implicitly, which is this decline is cyclical based on where we are in the interest rate trajectory and the liquidity setup, or is it more structural? There, I must admit, I think there is a bit of a split house. One could argue that the emergence of the bond market puts some systematic pressure, but one could also argue that this happens every time interest rates are at the bottom, and that you know, things will turn around. There are some who sort of believe that perversely right now, an increase in interest rate cycle might actually end up being a little bit better for banks.
Okay. And what's the withdrawal rate of that excess money you got, Jairam?
Yeah, the money is going, Lata, but not nearly as much as one had originally anticipated. At last look, we still had, you know, more than or about a half of the extraordinary deposits that happened during the demon period on the savings side still with us, and about a quarter on the current account side. This is much higher than what personally I had anticipated, to be honest.